The Traitor Legions fell together during the Horus Heresy. 9 Primarchs, hundreds of thousands of Space Marines, an entire half of the Imperium's military turning on the other in one coordinated betrayal. But those are the famous falls. The ones history remembers. This list is about the others. The ones who fell alone. The ones who fell after the heresy in an Imperium that was supposed to have learned its lesson. And the ones who dragged everyone around them into the dark. Here is every Space Marine who fell to chaos. Let's break this down. The Relictors, they did not worship chaos, they studied it. The Relictors were a loyalist Space Marine chapter founded in the 37th millennium whose operating doctrine included something that no other chapter would attempt, and the Inquisition would eventually declare heretical: the collection and study of chaos artifacts. The Relictors believed that the weapons of the enemy could be understood, controlled, and turned against the forces of chaos themselves. If a demon's sword could be wielded by a Marine with sufficient willpower, it became a weapon for the Imperium rather than against it. If a warp-tainted relic could be analyzed and its power harnessed, the knowledge gained could protect humanity rather than corrupt it. The philosophy sounds reasonable. The execution was catastrophic. The Relictors accumulated a vault of chaos artifacts aboard their fortress monastery. They deployed demon weapons in combat. They experimented with warp-tainted materials under controlled conditions that were never as controlled as they believed. The Inquisition watched, warned, and eventually acted. The Ordo Malleus declared the Relictors excommunicate traitorous, stripped of their status as a loyalist chapter, branded as renegades, and sentenced to destruction. The Relictors fled into the Eye of Terror with their collection of forbidden artifacts, and the line between studying chaos and serving it dissolved somewhere in the transit. The Relictors are the chapter that proves the franchise's oldest warning about the Ruinous Powers. You do not need to worship chaos to fall, you just need to believe you're smart enough to use it without consequence. Nobody is. Subscribe and tell us in the comments which fall you think is the most tragic. Let us keep going. The Sons of Malice. They worshipped a chaos god who hates chaos. Malal, sometimes called Malice in the lore, to navigate Games Workshop's complicated copyright history with the character's original creator, is a renegade chaos entity, a god of anarchy and self-destruction who exists in opposition to the other 4 ruinous powers. Malal feeds on chaos consuming itself. His doctrine is the destruction of chaos by chaos, a recursive philosophy that turns the warp's own hunger against it. The Sons of Malice adopted this creed. They were a Space Marine chapter that practiced ritualistic cannibalism, consuming the flesh of their enemies as part of a religious ceremony that the Inquisition tolerated for centuries before deciding it could no longer be ignored. The chapter's beliefs placed them in opposition to both the Imperium and the Chaos gods simultaneously. They served a god that wanted to destroy the other gods, which made them enemies of every power in the galaxy. The Inquisition declared them renegade. The Sons of Malice fought back, retreating into the regions of space where Imperial authority was thin and continuing to wage their private war against chaos using methods that were themselves chaotic. The paradox is the point. The Sons of Malice are the chapter that proves you can oppose chaos with every fiber of your being and still be corrupted by the opposition itself. Fighting monsters with monstrous methods does not make you a hero, it makes you a different kind of monster, and the fact that your monster points in the right direction does not change what it eats. The Crimson Slaughter. Before they were the Crimson Slaughter, they were the Crimson Sabers, a loyalist chapter with a spotless record and an unwavering commitment to the Imperial Creed. Then they committed a massacre. During a campaign against a chaos-tainted population on the world of Eumidia, the Crimson Sabers killed every living thing on the planet. Men, women, children, livestock, vegetation. The order came from their chapter master, Sevastus Chronon, and the Marines obeyed because the population was corrupted and the Codex demanded purity. When the killing was finished and the planet was silent, the voices started. Every Marine who participated in the Eumidia massacre began hearing whispers. The dead spoke to them, not through the warp, through their own guilt, amplified and twisted by something that had latched onto the psychic residue of a planetary genocide. The whispers never stopped. They grew louder. They interfered with combat discipline, sleep cycles, and cognitive function. Marines who had been exemplary warriors began making errors. Squad cohesion degraded. The chapter's librarians could not silence the voices because the voices were not coming from outside. They were coming from inside, from the part of every Marine's psyche that remembered what they had done on Eumidia and could not reconcile it with the warrior's code they had sworn to uphold. Krenon sought a cure in the warp. He led the chapter into the Eye of Terror, believing that confronting chaos directly would exorcise the corruption. The Eye did not cure them. It completed the transformation. The Crimson Sabers became the Crimson Slaughter, a chaos warband devoted to Khorne whose Marines discovered that the whispers quieted only when they killed. The massacre that damned them became their medicine. Kill enough and the voices dim. Stop killing and the voices return louder than before. The Crimson Slaughter fight not for glory or devotion, but for the silence that exists for a few seconds between one death and the next. They are the fallen chapter that proves the Imperium's most ruthless orders carry costs that the Codex does not account for. Huron Blackheart and the Red Corsairs. He asked for help. The Imperium said no. He took what he needed. The Imperium called him a traitor. 10,000 years of history condensed into the most predictable feedback loop in the setting. Lufakt Huron was the chapter master of the Astral Claws, assigned to guard the Maelstrom, a permanent warp rift in the Imperium's eastern fringe. The posting was critical. The resources allocated to it were not. Huron requested additional supplies, reinforcements, and fleet support. The High Lords of Terra denied every request. The Maelstrom threatened to swallow entire subsectors, and the Imperium's administrative apparatus treated the soldiers guarding it as an accounting line that did not justify increased expenditure. Huron began hoarding gene seed. He recruited beyond Codex limits. He built unauthorized warships. He forged alliances with other chapters who shared his frustration. When the Imperium sent forces to enforce compliance, Huron fought them. The Badab War lasted a decade and ended with the Astral Claws fortress burned, their chapter shattered, and Huron himself left for dead with half his body destroyed. He survived. His right side was rebuilt with crude bionics and warp-infused technology. He fled into the Maelstrom he had been assigned to guard and built the Red Corsairs, the largest and most successful pirate warband in the galaxy. His fleet raids Imperial shipping lanes, recruits renegade Marines from across the Imperium, and operates with a military efficiency that most Chaos warbands cannot match because Huron is not a zealot. He is a pragmatist. He does not worship the Chaos gods. He uses them the same way he uses salvage bolter rounds and stolen fuel, as resources available to a man the Imperium forced into the only market that would sell to him. The Red Corsairs are the fallen chapter that proves the Imperium manufactures its own enemies. Every renegade Marine in Huron's fleet is a warrior the Imperium trained, equipped, and then discarded through bureaucratic neglect. The Fallen Angels. The Dark Angels' secret shame, scattered across time and space by a catastrophe that the First Legion has spent 10,000 years trying to bury. When Luther betrayed Lionel Johnson on Caliban, the psychic shockwave of their battle tore the planet apart. Luther's followers, the Dark Angels who had been stationed on Caliban and had sided with their commander against their Primarch, were caught in the warp storm that consumed the world's remains. They were not killed, they were scattered, flung through the warp to different times, different locations, different centuries. Some emerged in the distant past, some emerged in the far future, some emerged on worlds where the Imperium did not exist yet and had to survive in isolation for millennia. The Fallen Angels are not a unified force, they are individuals. Lone Marines or small groups scattered across the galaxy, each one carrying the knowledge that they stood against their Primarch and that the Dark Angels will stop at nothing to find them. The Unforgiven, the Dark Angels, and their successor chapters hunt the Fallen with an obsessive secrecy that supersedes every other mission. If a Fallen Angel is detected, the Unforgiven will abandon an active campaign, leave allies unsupported, and redirect entire companies to capture the target. The Fallen must be brought back. They must confess. They must repent. The Dark Angel's entire post-heresy identity is built around ensuring that the Imperium never discovers the truth about Caliban. Every fallen angel who walks free is a liability. Every fallen angel who talks is a catastrophe. The hunt has lasted 10,000 years. It will not stop until every fallen is accounted for, and the number of fallen who remain unaccounted for is a figure the Dark Angels have never shared with anyone. Luther, the fall that broke a planet and cursed a legion for eternity. Luther was Caliban's greatest knight before the Emperor arrived. He found the infant lion El Johnson in the Death World's forests and raised him, trained him, and fought alongside him to pacify Caliban's great beasts. When the Emperor came and took the lion to lead the First Legion, Luther was the obvious second in command. But he was too old for full Astartes implantation. He received partial enhancements, stronger than a mortal, weaker than a marine. And that gap defined his relationship with the lion from the moment the Primarch assumed command. Luther was sent back to Caliban. Whether the lion intended it as a strategic assignment or a dismissal is the question that broke Luther's mind. He experienced it as exile. The resentment compounded across years while the lion fought the Great Crusade and Luther trained recruits on a planet that felt increasingly like a prison. Chaos found the crack. Dark voices whispered that the lion had abandoned him, that Luther's contributions were erased, that the only way to reclaim his dignity was to reject the Primarch who had taken it. When the lion returned to Caliban after the heresy, Luther was waiting as an enemy. Their battle was cataclysmic. Luther, empowered by chaos, struck a blow that critically wounded the lion. The moment the blow landed, remorse consumed him. He collapsed. The psychic backlash of their confrontation combined with the warp energies Luther had channeled tore Caliban apart. The lion was spirited away by the Watchers in the dark. Luther was imprisoned in the deepest cell beneath the rock. He has been there for 10,000 years, babbling prophecy and madness, the greatest traitor the Dark Angels have ever produced, and the secret they have spent 10 millennia ensuring nobody discovers. Argel Tal. The most sympathetic fall in the entire Horus heresy. Argel Tal was a captain of the Word-Bearers, one of the first Astartes to be bonded with a demon during Lorgar's pilgrimage to the Eye of Terror, and the character whose tragedy demonstrates that falling to chaos is not always a choice. When the Word-Bearers entered the Eye, Argel Tal was one of the warriors exposed directly to the warp's influence. A demon called Raum was bound to his soul, not through worship, not through a bargain, not through any willing act. The demon was pushed inside him, and Argel Tal spent the rest of his life fighting it. He could feel Raum inside his mind. He could hear the demon's voice. During combat, Raum would surface, transforming Argel Tal's body into a hybrid form, part marine, part demon, that was devastatingly powerful and completely horrifying to the man trapped inside it. Argel Tal did not want the demon. He did not worship chaos. He was a loyal son of Lorgar who obeyed his Primarch's commands because loyalty was the only framework his identity was built on, and when Lorgar's commands led him into the Eye, the consequences were permanent. What makes Argel Tal's story devastating is that he retained his humanity throughout. He questioned the heresy. He formed genuine bonds with other Marines. He protected those weaker than himself. He carried the demon's burden with a quiet dignity that made him one of the most beloved characters in the heresy novel series. Then Erebus murdered him. From behind. Without warning. Because Argel Tal's growing influence within the Word-Bearers threatened Erebus's political position, the most sympathetic fallen Marine in the franchise was killed not by the demon inside him, but by the man standing next to him, and the community has never forgiven the killer. Typhus, decades of hidden devotion, one sabotaged fleet, an entire legion condemned. Calas Typhon was the first captain of the Death Guard, the highest-ranking officer beneath Mortarion himself, the warrior the entire 14th Legion trusted as their field commander, the man whose judgment was considered second only to their Primarchs. He was also a worshipper of Nurgle, for decades, in secret. While commanding the Death Guard's operations, while standing at Mortarion's side in war councils, while making decisions that affected the lives of 100,000 Astartes, Typhon served a god his Primarch did not know existed and planned a betrayal his brothers could not have imagined. When the Death Guard fleet set course for Terra during the siege, Typhon struck. He murdered or disabled the fleet's navigators. Without guidance, the ships drifted into the warp and became becalmed. Nurgle sent his plagues, the Death Guard rotted, their armor fused with their flesh, their organs liquefied and reformed. Mortarion held out longer than anyone, watching his sons suffer, refusing to submit to the god Typhon had already embraced. When Mortarion's will finally broke and he called to the warp for salvation, Nurgle was the one who answered, because Nurgle was the one Typhon had been feeding for decades. The entire Death Guard became Plague Marines. Typhon became Typhus, the herald of Nurgle, the host of the Destroyer Hive. He is the most successful individual traitor in the franchise because his betrayal was not against an enemy or a rival. It was against his own brothers, committed by the man they trusted most, and the price was paid by everyone except the man who sold them. Erebus. Every other entry on this list describes someone who fell. Erebus did not fall. He walked into chaos with his eyes open, his hands steady, and a smile on his face, and the galaxy has been burning ever since. Erebus was not born Erebus. He murdered a pious man, stole his identity, and used the stolen name to position himself within the word-bearers as a spiritual authority. Working alongside Cor Phaeron, he steered Lorgar toward chaos after the Emperor destroyed Monarchia. He stole the anathema. He arranged the corruption of Horus on Daven. He orchestrated the single most destructive event in human history, the Horus Heresy, and he did it with the deliberate, methodical patience of someone building a cathedral, one brick at a time, over decades. The heresy was not a catastrophe that happened to Erebus. It was a project he completed. He designed the fall of the Warmaster. He sold the rebellion to Lorgar. He murdered Argel Tal when the possessed captain's growing influence threatened his position. He has survived for 10,000 years through political manipulation, sorcery, and an instinct for self-preservation so acute that not even Karn the Betrayer could finish him. When Karn beat Erebus half to death after discovering the truth about Argel Tal's murder, Erebus teleported away before the final blow. He is still alive, still scheming, still carrying the stolen name of a better man. Every other Space Marine who fell to chaos was broken, corrupted, manipulated, or possessed by forces beyond their understanding. Erebus understood everything. He chose it anyway. And the fact that the most deliberately evil character in Warhammer 40,000 is still breathing after 10 millennia is the franchise's darkest joke about the nature of justice in a universe that has none. Abaddon the Despoiler. The fall that refuses to call itself a fall. Abaddon serves chaos. He commands the Black Legion. He has waged 13 Black Crusades against the Imperium and shattered Cadia. By every measurable standard, he is the greatest traitor alive. And he would tell you he is the only free man in the galaxy. Abaddon was Horus's first captain, the warrior who stood closest to the Warmaster during the Great Crusade and the Heresy, and the man who watched his Gene Father's soul be obliterated by the Emperor aboard the Vengeful Spirit. After Horus died, Abaddon watched the Sons of Horus fracture into infighting, shrine worship, and pathetic attempts to clone their dead Primarch. He destroyed the clone. He repainted the armor black. He renamed the Legion and declared that the Sons of Horus were dead and the Black Legion had begun. Every Chaos God has offered Abaddon ascension. Khorne offered rage without limit. Slaanesh offered sensation beyond mortal tolerance. Nurgle offered an eternity of endurance. Tizi and Teach offered knowledge of the future. Abaddon refused all of them because accepting a god's gift means becoming a god's tool. And Abaddon has spent 10,000 years proving that a mortal with sufficient will can use the gods without being used by them. He wields Draken Yen, a demon sword containing the first murder. He wears the Talon of Horus. He commands Chaos Space Marines, demons, cultists, and renegades across a warband so large it functions as a legion. The 13th Black Crusade broke Cadia, destroyed the pylons that held the Eye of Terror in check, and tore the galaxy in half with the Cicatrix Maledictum. Abaddon accomplished what Horus could not. He did not need to kill the Emperor to break the Imperium. He needed to split it, and 10,000 years of patience gave him the blade long enough to cut reality in two. The final entry on this list is the Marine who fell to chaos and then refused to kneel once he arrived. Every other fallen Marine on this list serves a god, serves a madness, or serves a grudge. Abaddon serves a vision, a galaxy where chaos is a tool and the man holding the tool answers to nobody. The gods tolerate it because he delivers results. The Imperium fears it because a Warmaster who cannot be controlled by his own gods is a Warmaster who cannot be predicted by his enemies. Abaddon is the fallen Marine the franchise uses to ask its most uncomfortable question: is it really a fall if the person who fell is the only one who chose where to land?